I don't know why people can't hear me. Okay, I'm gonna try something else here. That should be better. How's that, everybody? Huh. Okay, audio is off. Please confirm, everybody, because I just unmuted. Can you hear me, Bill? Okay, very good. It looks like you can hear me. I had a slight delay here, part of which was me just getting acclimated to doing a live stream, which I've never done before. So somehow I pulled it off and was only 1 minute late. All right. Well, looks like we got about, oh boy, I don't know how many people are joining here. What I'm going to do is just take questions as they come through on the stream here. And again, this was an Ask Matt thing. So let me just start by thanking everybody for the support. And this is a Patreon only live stream. And I'm a little bit under the weather. I have a head cold. I got married last Saturday and I'm still recovering. So for those of you who have a drink, here's to your health. So let's see what we got here. Okay, sounds good and clear. Very good. So I'm doing all right. I had mentioned the wedding this past Saturday, and we had it here at the house. And when we decided to do that about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, we decided to save some money because to have a reception for 100 people was going to cost, it's the food, the booze, and the help. That's a lot of money. So we did it for less than half, but boy, the work to do it, I should have paid the money. but it turned out great. Everybody had a good time, and we had about 100 people here. So we had the tent up and had perfect weather. So we couldn't have asked for it to be any better than that. So here's one question here, Jay Blasio. Matt, have you ever played in a band or played an instrument? I've never played in a band. I do play some instruments. My formal training was on violin for about 7 years. And I mess around the guitar, on keyboards, bass, the typical rock and roll stuff. I'm not accomplished, but there was a couple times I was going to bring the guitar out to demonstrate a few things. I just chickened out. I may do that in the future. So yes, I do play a little bit, but again, not accomplished. Let me just go back here. Too much to drink on the wedding? Well, it's more or less, I like to call it too little to eat. This was a great party. So the plan was, we had the wedding at the church, and I live across the street from a park, and we took some pictures at the park while the party got started, and we walked from the park to the house, and we kind of walked down this hill right to the house, which was really cool because everybody cheered us. And my plan was to get out of my tuxedo and into some more comfortable clothes. I never got out of the tuxedo. That's how good of a party it was. It took me like 2 hours to get to the back where the bar was. But it was a lot of fun and a lot of family, a lot of friends. And I'm a little older now, so it's a different kind of a wedding, So let's see here. Let me just backtrack real quick. Matt, you always do such a great job with your videos, and I wondered if you were still going to do a video on the monkey sometimes. That's Jeff the Whiff. Jeff, yes, I will be doing the monkeys. When people ask me if I'm going to do a band, I usually always say yes. And the monkeys are one that I consider it's a multi-video series. It would probably be at least 3 videos. So that's a bigger one. It's a lot more preparation. And I might do them by end of year. I've got another big one coming up this summer that I really want to get off my chest. First, it's the Beach Boys. The Beach Boys, I think that'll be 5 videos. And I've been actually working on the Beach Boys for about Well, actually, kind of before I started this station and collecting information, particularly around the Smile sessions and that whole thing. So, but the monkeys are coming. I'm a big fan, and I think they're a very good story. I think they're an underrated group. You can say all you want about how they were manufactured, but the truth is in the grooves of the records. Okay, hello, Swedish Jeff, Bill, Byron Wetstein. Love your shows. Thank you, sir. Loud and clear. Excellent. Let's move down here. Secret Flowers Infinite sat down with a beer. Very good. Okay. All right. Greetings from Olympia, Washington. Welcome. Wedding playlist. Very good question. When it comes to stuff like, I have a pretty good playlist for just typical parties. I consider it eclectic. I have a lot of newer music in it, that's which you would call more, I guess, obscure music. But my wife Heather and I put together the playlist, and it was about 7.5 hours. And of course, she had a lot of 80s stuff in there for her girlfriends to dance to, which I love a lot of that stuff as well. You know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I have one trivia question for you. In the playlist for my wedding, which was 7.5 hours, I included one Beatles song. And there will be a prize to whoever gets it first. This is it's, I don't know what to tell you more than that. There's only one. And I'll just give you one hint. It was legitimately released while they were the Beatles. So nothing bootleg, nothing like that. So, but that was a lot of fun. I had rented, so the setup here at the house, we've got it's not a very big front yard, but there's a front porch, second story porch, first floor porch, a medium-sized backyard. So we had the bar in the back, we had seating in the front, and there was food inside. So I'd have audio in front, inside, and back. So I had to rent some equipment for that. So that went pretty well. Lori just listened to the Who live at Leeds. Ooh, very nice. Have you considered doing a Moby Grape band history? The older I get, the more I love their first album. Moby Grape will be done. In fact, last year I purchased, there's a biography on them that I purchased. And I really needed to do some more research. And I'm off to a very good start. I've got other albums. When I first heard them, the last album I got was their first album. So I was never that impressed with them. I get the first album, I'm like, whoa, now I understand. So yes, Moby Grape is coming. Will I get to them this year? I might. I've been a little bit heavy in 2023 on the San Francisco bands. And I've got an LA band coming, obviously the Beach Boys, and I'm going to sneak a British band in there, a couple British in between, I think. And then I've got another more obscure band coming that is sometimes the obscure ones are good to just give you guys something different, and they're also easy and quicker for me to do. So lots coming. Is this your first only marriage, Matt? No, it's my second. No live band, just a playlist from my just an iPod. Will you meet Mrs. Pop Goes the 60s one day? Maybe. I just said to her today, I said, hey, I'd love to introduce you at some point. You guys have met my dog, Bogey, both dogs, Oreo and Bogey. And Heather will, she'll make an appearance, I'm sure. And okay, so Mason Chase, greatly appreciate your birds videos. Thank you. Yeah, that was my first really solid series on a 60s band other than the Beatles. And I really took some special care with that one because I really love the birds. And I'm proud of that series, actually, quite proud of that. Yeah, so Beach Boys, I don't know how many. It's funny how when I do band videos, I always get somebody, especially with the obscure ones, oh, I hate this band. How could you waste any time on this band? And then I get other comments, I love this band. I'm so glad you did it. So I just have to expect that with every band I do, except for the Beatles. Well, then they say, shut up with all your academic bullshit and just listen to the damn music. I get that as well. So you just can't please them all. All right. Yeah, so Beach Boys, do I mean 10? No. 5 is probably what I'm going to do. There's going to be quite an emphasis on the Pet Sounds era, and there's going to be quite a lot dedicated to understanding Smile. Because I think that a lot of my viewers will, I mean, Smile is very intimidating if you want to approach and try to figure it out. And I think that there's a lot of people that would appreciate kind of more of an overview, what led up to it, what's the music, why didn't it come out, what are the reasons, that kind of stuff. So I think the main thing I'll be offering the people that know a lot about the Beach Boys and Smile, this is a point in the Beach Boys or in any just rock history where there is a lot of myth. And I will be addressing all of them. So that'll be a good part of the whole series of the Beach Boys. Yeah, Monkeys, I'm guessing will be a few videos. They've got such a lot of music. Their story is pretty easy to tell, though. They didn't have any new members. They just lost them. You know, it was one of the things about these videos. If you lose an important member and another one comes in, you got to tell that story a little bit, maybe close up some loose ends of the member that left. Like in the Byrds video, I kept talking about Gene Clark in the years after he left the Byrds because I thought that was appropriate. We don't have to do that with the Beach Boys. I'm sorry, the Monkees. Do you plan on making a Spotify playlist of all your music? I really hope you will. You know, I have to get back to my podcast and Spotify. I should really be doing a Spotify playlist or at least a podcast of every band that I do. And people have asked me about podcasts. And I'm a little reluctant to do, some people want me to take my videos and convert them to a podcast, podcast. And I didn't want to do that because so much of my videos are video heavy. And a lot of the story is told with graphics. So you'll lose a lot of that. But as far as playlists goes, I would like to do more of that. And I think that I could craft a really nice, like a radio broadcast / Spotify playlist for people that want to just listen. And if I were to do like the Byrds, for instance, I probably could do a couple different lists, something more introducing somebody to the Byrds and something a little bit more in depth. Oh, we have the first guess on the Beatles song. We have Here, There, and Everywhere. No. Sorry, Bill. Long and Winding Road. No. What are your thoughts on Tommy Hall in the 13th floor elevators? Well, I just got asked that yesterday. I think, hey, are you doing a 13th floor elevators video? I've been asked that off and on for the 3 years I've been doing this, 3.5 years. I certainly will be doing them. And I started some research a year ago already on it. I haven't picked it up because I've had all these other things to do. But yes, they are going to get done. They really deserve one. I mean, as far as psychedelic bands, we always hear San Francisco, Los Angeles, some of the British stuff, but there are other great psychedelic bands from all over the place, and they are an important one, so we will talk about them. All My Loving, no. Revolution 9, How Did You Know? No, not that one. Something, no. Here, There, and Everywhere, no. And I Love Her, no. Across the Universe, no. Birthday, no. Okay, no. If I Fell, no. Here Comes the Sun. You guys are going for the love songs, all right, aren't you? I Will. One for Your Life. Not bad. Mr. Tudor is here. Thank you for the congratulations. Badfinger history. I've been asked that a few times. There's a very good documentary that really, I don't know that I could do better than it. I may do that one. That's not high on my list right now because I consider them a early 70s power pop band. And although they had their start in the 60s, they actually had a couple pretty decent singles prior, the very early Ivy days. One pretty cool psychedelic song as well. Very sad story. Excuse me. All right, what else we got here? You Know My Name. No, I saw her standing there. It Was Not Real Love. My wife's name is not Martha or Julia or Rita or Mustard. Okay. How about Arthur Lee and Love? Yes. One of the best bands, I think, coming out of Los Angeles in the 65, 66 period is Love. And I've been asked that. That's been requested many times. And I'm about, I could do it. I could start it now. But between, like I say, I might, Moby Grape was asked about. I probably would do Love before Moby Grape just to balance a little bit because I've been very heavy with the San Francisco bands. What other San Francisco bands would I do? There's another one. Well, the other one I would love to do, which isn't always thought of as a San Francisco band, would be Sly and the Family Stone. Big Sly fan. And there would be an album that never was that'd come with that episode as well. And for you Beau Brummels fan, I just got this in the mail last week. This is a pre-wedding present to myself. This is their entire catalog. It's like 8 CDs or something. I had most of their stuff, but this was really for a completist. I thought, well, I think I'm going to do it. It was only for like $47. It was pretty cheap. It's all too much. No. What is your occupation? I am in marketing. So I've been in marketing all my life. My background is I'm a designer. Mostly I came from the print design background as a graphic designer. And then I got into television production. And and then from there, you had to wear a lot of hats in marketing after the crash of 07, 08. So at some point I did a little bit more social media stuff. But it's kind of a funny thing how I started this video. It wasn't really, I never would have started it if it wasn't for some bad things that happened to me. And I had to do some on-camera stuff. So my video production stuff was always behind the camera. I was a producer. I was the guy behind the camera, barking out orders with a clipboard. And I never would dirty my hands with operating a camera or editing. But as time went on, I had to do that. And I had to learn all that. And I always had an eye for composition. So some of that came easy, although I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to the technology. Beach Boys is problematic since most of the information resources out there are outdated or full of inaccuracies. Well, I find mostly with the Beach Boys, it's not a matter of inaccuracy so much as it is bias. And as you know, if you've been watching this channel, I'm real big in detecting bias because that really gets you, once you can call that out, it's really a lot easier to understand the history. It reveals itself in a much more logical way and satisfying way. So there'll be a lot of that to go through. Vinyl finds video. Would I ever do that? Okay. So that would be, I guess, what the YouTube vinyl nerd community calls the vinyl haul committee videos, I think. I don't know that I would do that. I don't think I can make that very interesting. I haven't been buying a lot of vinyl in big quantities for some time. For a lot of reasons. I just moved. When you move 2,500 albums up 3 floors of stairs, you're like, oh, do I want to get any more? But I might. I wouldn't say no. I actually, 2 summers ago, it's already 3 summers ago almost, I was in San Francisco. And I took my camera and I was doing some video for a potential thing here on Pop Goes the 60s. And while in San Francisco, I was visiting all the Alfred Hitchcock film sites from Vertigo and the Birds and the like Jefferson Airplane sites and the house on 2400 Fulton Street and all those great landmarks. And I did a video inside one of the record stores there, but it didn't go very well. They were not very nice. They're very rude, actually. Paul Summerfield from Liverpool. It is 12:41 there. Well, thank you for staying up. I won't do all these. I did this about an hour and a half after I get home from work. This is the most convenient time for me to do it during the week. But I will be doing some at different times so overseas people can join in. But I really appreciate it, Paul. Thank you for joining. Australian band, the Easy Beats. Yes. Now, one of the things I do have, I've got all their albums. That's no easy feat. It took a long time to get their albums. So I do have that planned. I don't have a lot of their history. So it'll probably be more focused on the music. But they're a good band. And that I haven't had that requested for a while. But up till about a year ago, that was one of my bigger requests. Canned Heat, yes, another San Francisco band. So, all-time favorite from Jay Blasio. You liked my Association, Zombies, Paul Revere, and Birds. Yeah, those. I was really surprised how many people watched the Paul Revere and the Raiders videos. That was one of my bigger requests, but I was really shocked with how many people were into that. So I'm thinking, well, should I do more of the pop '60s? Should I do more? I mean, the psychedelic stuff seems to be a little bit more of a. It's a very the psychedelic stuff is a very narrow field of people, but it's pretty strong. And I've got a lot of that. I got a lot of everything really. So that's why I jump around. You'll notice I did a couple of R&B things. I'll do a psychedelic band. The stuff I got coming up, it's always pretty much changing. And then I like to throw a wrench in there with some Beatles stuff as well. Yardbirds. Great Unknown Band, Unaltered Segments. I don't know them, Jerry. Do not know them. It's not Here, There, and Everywhere. This is one you would. I shouldn't. I'm going to give you guys a hint. It's an upbeat song. Lori Raleigh. Love that I connected with the Flirtations. Yeah, that was a great one. The Flirtations reached out to me, which was great. I didn't really have to work too hard on that, other than just making the original video. And that's when it's funny, you guys would laugh. So I did the Flirtations video, and one guy was really hacked off by that video. He said, "Matt, you have jumped the shark. Why would you spend time on it? Blah, nobody knows it." Well, it's what I do on this channel. You don't have to watch it. I don't remember his name. CCR, another San Francisco band. Yeah, I would do CCR. CCR is a band I'm a big deep cuts guy, and I never found that they had a ton of awesome ones, but they've got a couple awesome ones. And they're kind of a sad story. I think the interesting story of CCR is how they didn't get along. They kind of blew it for themselves. Let's see. You looked at rock music on 60 shows. Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, I got that a lot. So I did a video. If you haven't seen it, bands that appeared on 60s television shows, and I didn't put the Seeds on there. I think that did the top 10 bands. I don't know why I didn't do the Seeds. Maybe because I don't remember. I Survived Disco. Yes, so did I. I was actually there for that one. I think we prefer non-mainstream bands like 13th Floor Elevators. Yeah, I think it's mixed. I really don't have an understanding yet of what percentage of my audience likes the pop stuff or I can tell you that obviously the more popular stuff gets way more views. I mean, that's the one metric I can give you. What's the first Beatles song you remember hearing? Well, I had, there were 345s that my buddy Dan had. So when I was 3 years old, I moved to the house where I grew up. Dan lived next door. He had 7 older brothers and sisters, lots of records. So they had 345s. One was Do You Want to Know a Secret? That was on VJ. One was the Come Together something single, and the other was Revolution, Hey Jude. So I heard one of those first. I couldn't tell you what. Brady Dale asking for the Vanilla Fudge. Yeah, the Fudge, that wouldn't take very much. They only had about 4 albums, I think. And I think they were more suited as a live band. I don't even have every one of their albums. I think I've got 3 of the 4, maybe. I don't have the first album yet, by the way. So do you think Mark Lewison will ever put out another book? Most definitely. I'm a keen observer of Mark Lewison, and I think what's happened here, the book, Volume 2, is expected out in 2023, if you do the 10-year math thing, like we were told early on. That's getting pushed back a year, it looks like next year. And basically, I think he had to make some changes just to make some money. I calculated how much he was advanced and how many hours he works in a week, and calculate how much he makes per hour. And it's like minimum wage. He has to pay for all of his travel. So the big chunk he got paid, that's over 30 years. It's not a lot of money, really. So I don't begrudge him taking some time off to make a few bucks. I think his wife might be, I think she's a lawyer or something. So they probably can afford to do, he probably doesn't have to like support a big family, but I do expect volume two out next year. Volume two and three, I think he's been somewhat writing and researching simultaneously. Does that mean I think volume three is going to come out in less than 10 years? No. And I think he's also, this is a hunch. If you're familiar with the recording sessions book he did in '88, he's very embarrassed by that book because he was stuck with a format that he didn't choose. It had a word count. He realized that wasn't going to work, and it's not accurate enough. So I have the feeling he's going to try to incorporate some of that into volumes 2 and 3. I could be wrong, but I think he may try to do that. Rocky Erickson influenced the Beatles. Oh, is that so? I did not know that. Did not know the Beatles were aware of 13th floor elevators. Jilly, it is not If I Fell. It is not Got to Get You Into My Life. It is not I Want to Tell You. Have you ever considered a spin-off channel called Pop Goes the 70s? Well, I have. Before I started this actual channel, I had I kind of had ideas of not a radio show, but Pop Goes the 60s is a term I had around for a long time. And about excuse me, working on this cold here. In about 2010, well, I lost my job. My kids were younger, and I had some free time. I was freelancing, so I was making enough money to pay the bills. But I had time, and I started to write a book. And little did I know, 10 years later, that book would really become this channel. So I had already kind of conceived of doing, what if I want to do some 70s? So I think what I may do is I may venture into the 70s occasionally. I don't want to get people's hopes up because I'm not going to be doing every band. I really want to get most of my 60s bands done. And I had 10 years of videos to do. I'm in the middle of year 3 right now, or 4. So the 70s stuff, I might tackle a few bands. I've got a couple favorites that I may do, but and I might just do some pop culture stuff. I've got my field of specialty in music is 60s, but my field of specialty of pop culture are the 70s because I grew up during that time, and I've got a very good pop culture collection, and I may want to bring that out to show you guys. I think you'd appreciate it. Ultimate Spinach, the Bosstown Sound, yeah, Boston band. Got a couple Boston bands ahead of Ultimate Spinach, like Orpheus, but they are on my radar. It's not Besame Mucho. Everybody's got something to hide except for me and my monkey. Well, that is upbeat. I'll give you that. Okay. A lot of current music critics rank Radiohead's albums very high. I was wondering what you think of their albums and how they compare to classic 60s and 70s albums. I think they compare well. I've not heard all of their albums. I've got a couple that I don't play their albums all the way through. I'll grab a couple of their songs from my playlist when I have parties, and I always sprinkle some Radiohead in there just because I like it. It still sounds fresh to me. Even they're not new, they're old already. So I think they're a band that's going to have a long-lasting effect. Love your book reviews. Current reads, suggestions, any Beatles? Oh boy, lots of books. I got a shelf over there I've got so many books that have not been read. What have I been reading? So typically I've been researching the Beach Boys stuff right now. Sometimes I just grabbed, do I have it here? I didn't bring it up here with me, but it was a Ian McDonald book that he wrote after Revolution in the Head. It's called The People's Music. And I just read most of that this past week or so. That guy's incredible. He's so good. So that's what I might do. What else have I got? I might dip into, as far as Beatles stuff, I might go into some of the May Pang books and just compare them. She had her very first book. I think there was a heavy hand by the publisher involved in that. I think the second book might be more accurate. Obviously, she's had her documentary out that came out, I think, in fall. And that is due to come out on Blu-ray, streaming, and DVD, I think, end of summer. So I might dip into that. As far as other Beatle books, I might start doing like my first Beatle book I ever had was the illustrated record by uh, Carr and Tyler. So that was my introduction to rock journalism. Very good start for me. And then the Nicholas Schaffner book, just great works. So yeah, there's stuff coming. But I don't have anything coming up soon in the book reviews. But in some of the Beatle album reviews, I've got a couple more of those coming. I just haven't been able to get behind the camera. Please don't cover the big bands. You're best when you do the forgotten bands. Yes, but I don't get as many views, unfortunately. Drive my car, no. So another request from Moby Grape, The Seeds, Country Joe and the Fish, Hot Tuna. Certainly Country Joe and the Fish. I just recently got into some of their later albums, like 69 and 70. I was surprised how good they were and how much I liked them. The Seeds has been a pretty popular request. Not one of my favorite bands because I think a lot of their songs sound the same, but they've got a couple later era songs that are quite psychedelic, and I think they have an interesting story at least. King Crimson, I would say that would be good. That's a 70s band for me. Zeppelin's a 70s band. All those bands that had albums that came out in 69 that had huge careers in the 70s, I consider them more 70s bands. So that would be more on the back burner. I know there's a lot of King Crimson fans out there. I've seen them in concert once. I played Happiness is Warm Gun at my divorce proceedings. That's a joke, gang. Barella 309, thank you. Thank you for that. She came in through the bathroom window. No. West Coast pop art experimental band. You know, this is a quite 100 Deaths is asking about that one. I must confess, I don't have enough of their material. I've got one album on vinyl, and I think I've got 2 as downloads. And one of the very early albums I remember is when I was a teenager in the 80s. Obviously, this is before the internet. I would buy albums mail order. I would get Goldmine magazine, and I'd see all these stores like what was it called? Place in New York, not Mainstream. I forget the name of it. Anyway, I ordered some albums from a guy, or actually, I asked if he had them, and I was asking condition or something, and he sent me all these albums without me even paying for them. And one of them was the second album or third album of the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band. And I didn't have enough money to pay for all this, so that's when they got sent back. So that's my big story with them at this point. But they've got some really good stuff. Very good stuff. How come there isn't any live footage on Love except Bandstand? Well, they didn't play outside of Los Angeles much. Swedish Jeff, you nailed it. Thank you, girl. Swedish Jeff 2022. That is the song I put in the playlist. And notice it was on one of those first things. Whoever asked it, I didn't mention that the B-side of Do You Want to Know a Secret on the VJ label because it's Thank You, Girl. So you might have figured that one out. So Jeff, let me just take a screenshot of this so I don't forget you. And you will be getting a prize of some sort. I will have to decide on that, but we'll make it worth your while. Thank You, Girl. Man, what a great song. I've been listening to that song more lately just because it's got so much energy. Ringo's drums are great, and it's just infectious. Sly and the Family Stone stole the show. Yes, they did many times when they showed up. Yeah, Easy Beats, another Easy Beats. Okay, yeah. Alton Spinach, Captain Beefheart, Beau Brummels. Brady Dale has the box set. Yes, CCR is definitely a San Fran band, although people mistake them for a New Orleans band. Let's see here. Yeah, the 70s. I've got my favorites of the 70s. It's nothing too out of the ordinary. I'm a big fan of Steely Dan. I'm a big fan of Joni Mitchell. I'm a big fan of Bad Company and Free. Big fan of Bowie, big fan of Elton John. So I might touch upon some of those, but I don't know that I would do the normal style of history that I do it for the 60s bands. I'm not sure, because a lot of those artists, you feel the need to talk about their, I would feel a need to give more of their history, which would probably start in the 60s, come to think of it. Have to think that through. Quicksilver, got a request for Quicksilver. Could you do a vinyl tour? Yeah, I could do that. How I organize them. Yeah. Show my favorites. Yeah, so these shelves you see behind me, I had those built by a carpenter friend of mine. I designed those, and I wanted to when I started getting into listening to vinyl again about, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, when I got so sick of listening to my playlists, and I just got bored with my choices. And I realized that if I put an album on and I forced myself just to listen to one side, it was more relaxing. I've got many albums I've never even listened to that I probably had for 30, 40 years. Gave me the opportunity to start listening to my stuff, and it was just a lot more enjoyable. So I might do some videos with regard to that, looking around here a little bit. I still don't have this upstairs done, but when it's done, we'll give you guys a look. Will we be seeing Jude Kessler? I just recorded something with her about a week ago. Week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago. So you will be seeing something. She's got some new stuff coming out. She's doing audiobooks of some of her earlier works that are going to be very interesting, because she hired a voice talent that is an impressionist who does the Beatles. So you will be seeing a video on her with me very shortly here. Mark Wood, was there anything that genuinely surprised you after watching the Get Back documentary? I was struck by how tough and self-assured Ringo was. Ringo was a wonderful surprise to me. And I was focusing on, John, Paul, and George, typically the three Irish brothers huddled together, Ringo off in the back. And all he did was just pay attention the whole time. Started when he had to, stopped when he had to. I was really impressed with how he supported them. I was shocked, actually. It was anything but. I mean, you can't blame Ringo for any breakdown anywhere. I mean, he's relatively blameless. So that was wonderful. And just the camaraderie. I didn't expect it to seem, that happy. Obviously, there was things going behind the scenes where things weren't happy. Ballad of Matt and Heather. How about covering the band Federal Duck? I've heard of them. I've not heard that album. I do know that. Interview with Mickey Dolenz, the Last Monkey. I don't know. Don't know. Haven't tried. I've approached a couple people. He's not one of them. I don't feel the need. There's enough Monkees information. I wouldn't need his input. Although I've got a couple of his interviews I've recorded, so I've got some stuff from there that was helpful. Those go back about 10 or 12 years. The 60s band montage. Yeah, actually, I've already covered them as a part of the Left Bank video I did. GPT is not doing my research yet. No. I think they might be doing some other YouTubers' videos, though. Could be. Cold Sun, 1969, buddy. No, I've not heard of them. Yes, Carrie Ford mentions the major bias splits with the Beach Boys. I've talked a lot about the biases in the Beatles and the narratives that have been. There's a lot of different biases from a lot of different directions, but there's really only one direction the bias comes from in the Beach Boys story, and it's a little more. It's less complex, which makes it all the more strange that there would be that much bias. I'm gonna not go into that, save that for the video. Mark Wirtz, is that a reference to Strawberry Alarm Clock? Manson tapes. Yeah, I will cover the Manson stuff a little bit. I'm not going to go into the Manson stuff too much in the Beach Boys. It's not as big a part of the story as people make it out to be. Manfred Mann, yes, I will be covering Manfred Mann. Just the '60s version, though. I'll go up to the chapter 3, those two jazz albums in like 69, 70. I am a big fan of their, I guess, the 67, 68 period stuff. It's not heard much in America, but I've collected that stuff over the years, and I've been quite impressed with it. What goes into the making of your videos? Jeffrey Dunn asks. Well, Jeffrey, I might do a video on that. I typically, for example, the video I just did on the review of the Beatles solo years and comparing them with the whole field of the decade of the 70s, I started working on that. I had the idea, it was over a year ago, and I just started to jot down albums that I thought were cutting edge albums, vanguard albums that have stood the test of time, and putting them up against Beatle albums. And a story kind of emerged there. So that one I took my time with, and I was ready to do it a couple weeks back, and I finally did it. But generally, the process of doing a band history is more involved. So the first thing I do is I go to my computer here and I make a playlist. Let's say it's going to be 13th Floor Elevators. I grab all their music, put it in a folder, put it in chronologically, say, okay, what songs are important to talk about, and they're listed chronologically by year and by album. And then what I'll do is I'll start to make an outline on paper. And for instance, like I don't have any here, but my Jefferson Airplane, I mean, that was probably about 10 pages. Let me pull it off right. Let me just grab it real quick here. Bear with me, folks. So it might be easier to understand how I do this and how I don't do certain things. Let's see here. I'll just jam everything in here when I'm done with it. Okay, well, I've got part 2 and 3 of Jefferson Airplane. Each one of these outlines is about 3 pages. So there are 2 columns. I have the songs bulleted out. I have my introductory stuff. I have notes in there to add graphics, so when I'm talking, I know when to stop. I don't have to memorize so much. So once I get to the writing stage, I've already taken, excuse me, I've already taken notes from several books, brought those into the notes, and then I just have to organize the notes chronologically, and then it starts to fall together pretty well. It's very interesting because all these bands, they have natural breaks in the history of the band. So that's where I make my first break if I have to have a multi-part video. Compare Beatles and Oasis. Boy, I just don't know Oasis well enough to do that. I'm aware of just some of the hits. As far as when they came up with me, I never really heard them. I would hear a couple of hits, but they were not big with the crowd I was with. I really am very unfamiliar with their work. Bee Gees, great band to cover. Yes, they are. I'd love to do the Bee Gees. Obviously, focus on the 60s. I'd probably go up to about 72 with them. The disco era is when I grew up with the Bee Gees. Grapefruit, request for Grapefruit. I will be doing some videos. I'm going to call them not one album wonders, but something like that. There's a lot of bands that just had one album, and it might be worth doing just a feature on an album if it's good enough. Wedding song, that's all I got. Patricio. The Electric Prunes, yes, they are a particular favorite of mine. And very early on as a teenager, when I was trying to find as many psychedelic bands as I could, they were one of the early ones I looked into. And they were a little too garagey for my taste at the time, but I've grown to like them even more now. So yes, I will be doing the Electric Prunes. How many here bought multiples of albums, vinyl, 8-track cassettes, and CD? Well, I bought some CDs. When the CD era came out, and then into the 90s when they started to get better sound and better compilations, I bought CDs and I went away from albums for a while, but I bought a lot of used albums up until the early 90s because maybe the mid 90s. Because in my town, I could get a used copy, but near mint of almost any classic rock band for $4.98, whereas you're paying $16 for a CD. So I bought, it was more of a money saving effort for me. So I've got CDs here, but I don't have a ton. I've maybe got 100 or so. Who is carrying the musical torch today that you are excited about? Mason Chase is asking this question. Well, I'm not excited about anybody. I do have, over the past 10 years or so, I've cherry picked some songs I've heard of new groups that I really like. And I typically just have a song or two from them that I throw in a playlist. I very seldom delve into their whole catalog. So I'm not that excited. And it's partly because I just don't know a lot that's out there. I know a little bit, and I know there's some very good music out there. But I do like to see live music now and then in smaller venues. I'm kind of done seeing all the 60s acts that I grew up seeing back in the 80s and 90s. My buddy and I used to say, we got to see these bands now because we'll never get to see them again. And that was 25, 30 years ago, and they're still touring. But I mean, a lot of, I mean, the recorded vocals that are being used, I mean, I'd rather see younger bands now. Lunchtime Friday here in New Zealand. Carrie, very good. Too early for a beer? Join us. Are you at work? Oh, Glenn Fancher. The Pretty Things. Yeah, The Pretty Things. What a great story. Now there's a story. I've got all their stuff. And if big Pretty Things fans know that they also recorded under another name called The Electric Banana for some soundtracks, I've got that stuff as well. So that'll be a fun one to do. Easy Beats, more Easy Beats. Okay. What did you think of the Revolver reissue? That's from Charles Watt. I did not do a video on that. I think I'm the only YouTuber that discusses music that didn't do a video on that. I was impressed with it. I got it for Christmas from my kids, so I listened to it late. But I'm fascinated when it comes to these box sets. The thing I'm most interested in are the outtakes, alternate takes. I'm interested in hearing the different instrumental passages that don't get used and some of the banter. So I really liked it. It wasn't a mind-blowing thing at all, but I appreciated those tracks. I'll be doing a video on box sets as well coming up. AA, glad to see I'm doing a live show. Yeah, this is my first live. I never, in fact, I almost wasn't going to do these at all, but I thought, well, Patreon fans, at least I could. It's a smaller group. I would hate to do this, live with everybody. I don't think that would go well. The Shocking Blue, the Keggy. Yes, I've got everything. Well, no, I don't. I've got probably 4 albums by the Shocking Blue, but I've got, I think, all their stuff. And I'm somewhat of a completist, so if I like a 60s band, I just try to get everything, thinking that there's going to be some hidden gem there. And there's some bands where there's not that many hidden gems. Shocking Blue, dude, they have some though. I don't think they're a good band or not a great band, but I appreciate some of their deep cuts. Oh, somebody's asking about the Sonics as well. Yes, I may do that. I'm Grassroots. I will do the Grassroots. They get no respect. In fact, I don't get many requests for them. They do not get much respect. Yes, the Doors for sure. They would be one of the biggies. So the biggies I consider the Doors, the Kinks, obviously the Beach Boys, the Monkees, the Stones. That's going to be a big one. That one I won't get to this year. Searchers, yes. In fact, I've been listening. I had a CD I made, and I found it recently that I've been listening to that in my car for the last, I would say, 2 months. Great band. I do love the Searchers, so I will give them the Pop Goes the 60s treatment for sure. Dave Clark 5, okay. Surf bands, the Shantays, the Challengers. I don't know if I'm going to do well, the first band I'm going to do for surf. I will do the Ventures. That's not an easy one to do because they had so much material. I don't won't play at all, but kind of an interesting story. So I've got plenty of research already started on the Ventures. I would do them first before any other surf bands. Another Shocking Blue. Wow. Let's see here. Surprised you're not covering Sgt. Pepper LP on the anniversary of release. If you refer to the box set, that's before I had a channel. So that's why I didn't cover it. Yeah, so the Beatles, I think the only, let's see now. I did cover the Let It Be box set. I did do that one on the channel. Let's see here. Ramble Tamble. Okay, this is you're scratching me right where I itch, Pookie. That is a song by CCR. That's probably my favorite deep cut of theirs. Great song. The Leaves. We have a request for the Leaves. The Standells, LA band, very good. Steppenwolf, Grand Funk, CCR. Well, Steppenwolf has been requested several times. There's gonna be there's a few Canadian bands I'd like to do. Some popular, some not. The other big one being the Guess Who. The Guess Who are not very well understood in the America, especially their 60s material. Their 70s material sold pretty well here in the States, but let's see here. What else have we got? We have a Flirtations fan here. Great. Love to see a video on the Shangri-Las. You know, about 2 years ago, I was preparing to, I was going to prepare to start work on a video for them or just start gathering information. And I hadn't listened to their music that much because they only had a couple albums, but they had singles. And I was impressed with how good the records were. So I would like to do them at some point. And then maybe there'd be like kind of a If anybody can hear me out there, let me know. I had lost internet and I had to restart. Okay. So yeah. The Kegi said I was a good 5 minutes behind in chat, so maybe he had not realized it had gone to black. I did because I lost the stream. And let me just make sure you can hear me now. Good. Okay. Apologize for that. I've been here since October. That has never happened. Never happened. So I apologize. Let me see if I can get back to where I was. I didn't want to go too much longer than an hour, just partly because my voice is laboring. Let me see if I can get back here. Where in the heck was I? A lot of stuff here to get back to. Yikes. He was talking too much about the Beatles and they cut him off. Yes, I think so. Okay. Would you do a video on the Shags from 1967, the girl group? They're so bad that are good. I might. That's pretty funny. Other people have kind of approached that. There are a few groups named the Shags, and one from my hometown here that only had one single, I believe. Okay, I'm gonna try to catch up here quickly. Procol Harum, yes, I would like to do Procol Harum. Somewhat of an underrated band, but as far as 60s bands go, quite progressive. Yeah, Humble Pie, good one. Yeah, so I was going great there for a while there until my internet cut out. So I am going to chalk that up to technical difficulties outside of my control. Usually I'm the one that screws it up. The 60s Nirvana. Now, I actually own that album. I got that album. I was very young. I can't remember. I think I paid $30 for it, which was a ton of money. And I didn't care for it at the time. I ended up selling it. Some guy in Italy. And it was a hassle because I was selling it on eBay and I was getting yelled at because I did it wrong and all this. Yes, Nirvana. But interesting band. The Nightcrawlers, Little Black Egg, yes. Okay. World 964. Matt, we appreciate your hard work. Well, thank you. Thank you. It is a lot of hard work, actually. And it'll be nice now that I've got the wedding stuff behind me. I've got the summer and fall a lot less on my schedule. And I do have a full-time job, and I have 3 side businesses, of which this is one. So I really have to spend my time wisely. Which is why there's certain things about this channel that I don't. I could improve probably if I spent more time, but I just choose to get the content out there. And some things do fall by the wayside, I'm afraid. Let's see here. Blind Faith. I'll probably deal with Blind Faith when I cover Traffic. I think that's probably what I'm going to do. I won't do a separate video for Blind Faith, I don't think. Or maybe Cream. When I do Cream, one of the two, I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. I always considered the Blind Faith album to be closer to a Traffic album than a Cream album. So I'm back. Everybody's saying back. Good. Thank you for sticking around, everybody, and bearing with me. So I'm at about a little over an hour here, and I wanted to keep it to that only because my voice I'm having a little trouble with sore throat and stuff, and I'm a little stuffed up. But I do have our winner who guessed the song the Beatles song I played at my wedding. Oh, we got a couple late requests in here. We got Chapo, Family, and the Blues Magoos. Yeah, the Family is a very good band. I really like that group. And the Blues Magoos was one of the early bands I tried to get into. It took me a longer time to get into. The first 2 albums I was a little lukewarm on, but I loved the 3rd album. So that was the thing that really put me over the top with the Blues Magoos. Somebody was requesting the Amboy Dukes, The Attack. I did a couple videos on I think it was the top 5 or 5 obscure British psychedelic bands. I might do some more of that because it allows me to do some obscure bands that maybe only had a few singles and just lump them in with other like music. That seems to work pretty well. Alma Cogan. Yeah, I've been kind of following her. I didn't realize that she had a relationship with John Lennon until about a year and a half ago. So I did look into her a little bit. She was kind of an interesting story. Clear Light, there's another LA band. Oh, Silver Apples. I've been asked about Silver Apples, the electronic band from '68, I believe. Yeah, Tim Buckley. Yeah, Lori, I will be certainly covering Buckley. What an acquired taste. There's a lot of these groups that you wonder who. I think some people are starting to watch my videos that don't even know the group, that want to learn about them. They'll say, well, interesting story, not really my thing, but at least they'll watch the video. Let's see. Woody Blues has not been mentioned, I don't think. James Macy appreciated the video on Emmett Spiceland. Yeah, that was kind of a fun one to do, just kind of a one-off. I guess you'd call that a one-album wonder, and I'll be doing more of those. Yeah, Harry Nilsson. I will do Nilsson. What a voice. And I don't know that I'm too interested in going to his 70s stuff too much, just because I don't care for it as much, but we'll see when I write it. Some of these things kind of write themselves, so I don't always, I go in with an idea and I end up changing it because it just makes sense to change it. Probably won't be doing Rory Storm's band. So far as I know, they don't have any recordings. Nick Drake, another one. I have not covered Nick Drake, not yet, no. I didn't mention him in my last video, though, that album, one of his earlier albums. First album, I think. Are there any podcast YouTube channels that you particularly enjoy? Looking for recommendations. I have not had a lot of time to do either in the past year. Some of the people that I am acquainted with, like Anthony Rotuno, he's been on my show a couple of times. I pay attention to one of those people that I've got a connection with, because we do have kind of an ongoing dialogue. Jude Kessler would be another one. She appears on several podcasts. The Nothing Is Real podcast, I haven't listened to it for a while. Always have liked that. Those guys are great. There's several others, but there's so many out there, man. I just can't. And then I run into some that just aren't for me. They focus on an area that, and some of these podcasts, if they go 2 hours, it's a lot of time for me to devote to that if I'm not getting enough research out of it. And sometimes it is great just for entertainment's sake. Oh, you say, Dr. Robert said that Rory Storm and the Hurricanes did 1 or 2 singles in '64. Okay. Yeah, I haven't talked to Anthony in a while. He did congratulate us on the wedding. He said, hey, we got to get back together, because I think we last did a video. It was late December, I believe. Yes, the Doors for sure. We will do the Doors. French albums. Well, I'm glad to hear you mention that. Sergei Gainsbourg is somebody I've been looking into quite a bit. Just an interesting character, some interesting music, very unique. I do want to do one on Sergei Gainsbourg. The other French singers like Françoise Hardy or what are some of the others? France Gall, some of those. I might combine those. I don't know. I'm still learning about them. What's my favorite Jethro Tull song? Wow. Let's have a look here. My buddy Paul is a huge Tull fan, so he's influenced me a lot. And I grew up listening to the Tull stuff on classic rock radio, so generally, I knew the hits very well. Let me see if I got something here. Boy, one song that still gets me that I still love to listen to is Teacher. I think that's just an incredibly unique recording. And when you hear them do it live, they just can't pull it off. That's one song. There's a couple songs off the second and third album, the more acoustic songs. Some of those Jeffrey songs, I can't remember the names. Three Cheers or Mr. Haagen-Dazs, whatever. Some great stuff. I can't remember the names though. They don't make it easy on you names wise. Oh, Lori, you got another great request here. The Pentangle. Yeah, they are one of my all-time favorites. So one of the things I've done when I hit a certain age, probably about 40, maybe a little bit earlier than that, late 30s, early 40s, I started to refine my listening. In the 60s bands I listened to, I narrowed it down to, I didn't try to do this, it's just how it worked out, to about 10 or 12 bands. And they were the ones that just gave me the most joy, and the Pentangle was one of them. So you better believe I'll be covering them. Bridget Bardot, yes. Mr. Zimmerman. Dylan's going to be a tough one to do. I've been kind of approaching a few people, colleagues of mine that are more what I would call very, I don't like to work, they specialize in Dylan. He's such a lyric guy. You really have to come at it from an understanding of his lyrics. And I don't quite have that. I don't think I could do it justice. So I'm kind of waiting on that one a little bit. There are other ones I can do, but I've got some ideas for Dylan. So yeah, I will be. Marielle Mathieu. Yeah, I've got a couple of her albums, but that's wow. You guys are music fans here. Glad to see. Blue Cheer. Oh, another very good band. Underrated band. Everybody thinks they're just summertime blues, but they got really kind of mellow psychedelic. I saw Bert Jansch also in 2010. And he opened for Neil Young when I saw him. That was the only time I saw him. And it was one of those shows where it was a smaller theater and people were talking. And so I went there to see Jansch, not Neil Young so much. I've seen Young a few times, but I did see him, and it was great to hear him play. David B. Wow. Every Mother's Son. Well, would it be interesting? I think so. I really liked that band. They had 2 albums. And I listened to them, and I found their both albums in college. And I think they're slightly underrated, but I don't want to make too big of a deal out of them. But they've got some great songs. They come more from the folk scene with their harmonies, more Love and Spoonful type. For those of you who don't know, Every Mother's Son, but some very good stuff. Yeah, Donovan. Yeah, I will do Donovan. He's probably at least a 2-parter. Man, I could probably do 3, but I mean, should I? I don't know. That might be too much to ask. Depends on how long they are, I guess. But Donovan, I find his music very good. And he had a jazzier touch that a lot of other groups didn't have. And he kept his bands relatively small and soft. Let's see. Okay, Noel Redding. Okay, what else have we got here? Iron Butterfly. Yeah, there's a big Iron Butterfly has a very strong, a pretty vocal group of fans. My buddy who runs the Technicolor Web of Sound Psychedelic Web radio channel station, techwebsound.com. He's got a smattering of their best stuff on there, and he gets asked, well, why don't you have more? Why don't you have more? And everybody wants more Iron Butterfly. Yellow Balloon. Okay, that's yeah. Alex Chilton, big star. I would consider that 70s. Will I venture into the 70s? That's one of the few bands I might touch upon, not because they're power pop as they're called now, just because they're excellent. I did not see the new Big Star documentary. I'd like to see that one. Bobby Fuller 4, yeah, not bad. Some excellent late period singles there. I'm just going back here. The Cowsills. Yes, the Cowsills are getting done. I think they might get done in the next 5 to 6 months. I've kind of started them already. Excellent group. What's my opinion on the Left Bank 2 album? I consider that a very well done album. Front to back, I think it's an excellent listen. And I did cover that quite extensively in my Left Bank video. We got more Iron Butterflies here. Tommy James. Underrated or bubblegum? Both, actually. Late period Tommy James underrated. Earlier stuff a bit bubblegum. He's a guy I wouldn't mind interviewing, actually. I had a little bit of an inroads with Felix Cavaliere of the Rascals and Gene Cornish. And Gene Cornish is real tight with Tommy James. And I haven't been able to do a video interview with Gene Cornish of the Rascals yet because he doesn't do Zoom. He's been ill, and so that has proved problematic. Do I have a favorite song by The Move? I don't have a favorite song by The Move. Bubble Puppy, there's another obscure one. Box Tops are the Gentrys. Yeah, the Box Tops. It's kind of weird that Chilton was in that band and never really was allowed to grow into what he became. It's too bad. Okay, what else we got? Okay, Motown. Somebody's finally asked about Motown. Yes, I need to get to Motown soon. I've not done a Motown act yet. And we're just going to start with the big four. I don't know that I'll do all of them, first. I might pull in a smaller act. But I haven't gotten a lot of requests for Motown, strangely enough. But I will be doing Motown. I think there's a little bit. I'm a big fan of the Supremes. And if people out there, probably very few people know about their excellent deep cuts, that's something I would focus on because I think they're underrepresented in the oldies rock radio. It's just the hits. One of the few bands the Beatles did not like, the Supremes, surprisingly enough. Van Dyke Parks. Well, I'll be covering Van Dyke a bit with the Beach Boys videos, for sure. I've not done the Bold Rebels yet. And as I mentioned earlier, just got this in the mail last week. So this is the complete works. This has been in my Amazon cart for like a year and a half. And I finally pulled the trigger on it. Yeah, Moody Blues, I'm still kind of learning about the pre-Justin Hayward era. They only had 2 albums, a bunch of singles. It's a little confusing, but I want to have that kind of nailed down before I get into the, all the prog rock stuff they went into. Jerry Weber, Rascals. Yes, I've done the Rascals. So I did that in 3 parts, believe it or not. I was surprised I did that in 3 parts, but that's just how it wound up. Okay. Is that a Van Dyke Park? Yeah, that is actually. That Song Cycle. So I had brought that out. I've been researching the Beach Boys. So that's what I want to throw on the turntable. And I toyed with the idea of putting albums behind me of the upcoming videos I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do that. Although it kind of does happen once in a while just because I have it out. And this place is a mess. If you saw it, there's I have to reinforce one of my shelves that's crushing itself under the weight of all the records. Okay, Spooky Tooth. Maybe. Yeah, maybe Spooky Tooth. I know that first couple albums pretty well. Yeah, Badfinger. I have all of Badfinger's albums. In case when I was a kid, a teenager in the 80s, it was very difficult to get a copy of Straight Up. And I did get one. I forget. I bought it mail. I don't know where I sent away. Somebody was selling it. I must have paid. I don't remember, maybe $25. I don't remember. That was a lot of money. But the other albums I have, and I've liked all of them. Although I think that they haven't dated well for me personally. I was more into them back in the 80s. And I haven't gone back to them as much. Although I do have, when they came out on CD in the early 90s, when Apple re-released them on CD, they came with some bonus tracks. And you got to hear some of the stuff pre-Todd Rundgren on that Straight Up album, which is kind of interesting. And it shows, it's got some of the George Martin production stuff too, which I can see where they went away from George Martin. He just was trying to redo Abbey Road. He was kind of living in the past. Let's see here. What else we got? More Moby Grape. Well, okay, well, we got to do this. Supremes, okay. Tomorrow with Steve Howe. Yeah, that's a 1-album wonder. Got that album. That's a good candidate for 1-album wonder. I really like that group. Of all the British 60s psych bands that came out of that 67 phase, they're one of my favorites. The other group that's kind of interesting, worth mentioning, is called The Sin. That's with a lead singer named Steve Nardelli, but with Chris Squire on bass. That's kind of an interesting band as well. Yeah, Chilton is still underrated, I think. I mean, it's kind of a niche audience, a little cult following. Okay, Motown, Tamla. Yeah, I think Stevie Wonder would be the other one. Wow, his 70s stuff is so good. 60s stuff is so good as well. Zombies I've done. I'm glad to say that's checked off my list. That's a two-parter. You can find that right on Pop Goes the 60s. Daisy Rabbit, thank you. Calling me a rock star in my own right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Do I collect bootlegs? I used to. Back when I started, when I was a teenager and started collecting, I was 13 when I became a music collector. And then a few years later, I was probably about, well, maybe 15, I bought my first bootleg. It was a Beatles bootleg called Not Guilty. Cheap paper cover, paper sleeve, no label. Sounded pretty lousy. But that was my first entry. And then I started, when the CD era came out and there were more CDs on bootleg, I switched to that. Prior to that, I was collecting like picture sleeves and some, different country Beatle albums and stuff. But I quit that because I wanted to hear unreleased stuff. I thought there was all this stuff that was unreleased I would love. And there kind of is, but there kind of isn't. I've heard most all of it. I'm sure there's more out there we haven't heard yet. Yeah, Art, and then Spooky Tooth. I was thinking of the Art album, Pookie. That's a very good album. I always thought that the lead singer sounded a lot like Steve Marriott, and I was wondering if that's a reason that didn't quite take off like it should have, because it's pretty good music. The Smoke, another great psych band from Britain. The Raspberries 70s band, probably not in the way I do 60s bands. But I've had a couple of requests for Raspberries or Beatle type bands like Badfinger, Raspberries, things like that. Oh, Lee Hazelwood. Yeah, he's an interesting story. I think what I would do with Hazelwood is I probably would do Nancy Sinatra and then cover Hazelwood within her work, because that gets pretty weird, I think. Weird in a good way. Was it Some Velvet Morning? Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, Ron Wood's Birds, another good band, great crunchy R&B. Oh, Peter Banks was also in The Sin. I've forgotten about that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Chrome Destiny. Do I have a physical copy of the Beatles Niagara Reels? Oh, I do have. I've got some on CD. That's the only physical copy I have. And it's not nearly complete. The actual, if you were to get that on CD, it's like, is it 200 discs? It's long. I have them digitally mainly. Folk singer Matt McGinn, not aware of Matt McGinn. Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. Well, really good stuff. I'm not a blues guitar guy so much. I love blues rock. So I've never been a big, I like his stuff in Fleetwood Mac for sure, when he's not too bluesy. But that's a really solid band with great rhythm section, great guitar players. Too bad they couldn't have done more, couldn't got together a little earlier maybe. If they had were recording albums like 66, I wonder what those would have sounded like. James Gang, your album, great album. Yeah, big James Gang fan, big Joe Walsh fan. Uncle Joe, can't go wrong with Uncle Joe. And that first album, your album, is it's got some psychedelic stuff on it as well. I think 1969 is when they came out. Ernie, hey Ernie, how are you doing? I did see the Charlatans in Golden Gate Park in 1997. And I did not live in the Bay Area. I travel out there to see that show. A buddy of mine, with my buddy Paul, who runs Technicolor Web of Sound. So we were a couple of psychedelic heads back in those days, and we traveled great lengths to see certain bands, and that was one of the trips we took. D. Vinyl Daniel, thank you. He liked the Flirtations. Good. I'm glad you liked that. One of your favorite groups. Am I going to do any Yay Yay music? So that's a French. What would you call that? So this Yay Yay music are these young girls, kind of early Beatle era in France, that were recording pop songs, and they were very infantile, a little bit creepy actually. I may do some of that because some of it's a little interesting because it had to branch into the psychedelic age, and when it comes to doing that and something that's kind of creepy and maybe sexual, Sergei Gainsbourg rears his ugly head. And I do mean ugly head. And so he's involved in that as well. So maybe I'll combine that with the Gainsbourg video. I don't know. Got to do a little more research on that. Have you heard the unreleased Paul McCartney album Return to Pepperland? I've not heard that. I'm not aware of that. David Becky. Hey, David, how you doing? Good to see you. Sinatra had recorded Arkansas Cool, another bizarre song. Yeah, that was a really strange, some very strange music in the 60s that seemed to be like almost adult contemporary, but was not at all. Let's see here. Tim Buckley, another Tim Buckley. Somebody else asking about the Doors. Yes, I'm not going to be doing the Doors soon, but I certainly will be doing the Doors. One of the first books I read, like the first biography I think I read that wasn't Beatle related, was No One Here Gets Out Alive. Is that Danny Sugarman that wrote that by the Doors? So, and I read another book. It was I think John Densmore wrote it about 10 years ago, and I have that book. Yes, the Doors will get done. I'm losing my place here. Byrds album Turn Turn Turn, hard to get on vinyl. Did not know that. Of course, I haven't looked for it in vinyl for a while. I bought my copy in the 80s. It was not an original. Peter Grant, yeah, that should be an interesting story. I have not read that book. I did read a book on, there's a separate book on Alan Klein that I read. I use that for some of my research on the Beatles breakup and stuff. That was very good. It's told with, it's a lot softer telling of Klein's business dealings and stuff. And I think it probably gives him a little bit more of a fair view, if you can believe it. Matt, do you think you'll do a top 10 listing of your favorite songs of the 60s or top 10 favorite albums of the 60s? Well, Ernie, I don't know. One of the things I don't do on this channel a whole lot, I don't do a lot of rankings. I don't do too many lists. I do some. And I should probably do more because the YouTube algorithm loves that. And I would probably get placed in more feeds if I did that. My goal is to do more than one video per week. And my channel would have been growing probably more had I been able to produce more videos. But I'm not going to throw out a bunch of content just to please the algorithm, because that's going to not please the followers, the viewers. You know what, guys? I want to. So I did a video, one of my early videos. I called it the top 10 best Beatles songs, and I kind of wish I had waited to do that. But I have a part 2 to that, which are the next best 10. So technically, what you're going to get is the top 25. And so that's what I want to do soon, because I need to just get that off my chest. And what I'm doing, the reason I said I didn't do a good enough job the first time is because I didn't really list the criteria for what makes it the best. So unfortunately, I'm going to list that in the part 2, and people will have to go back and trust me on this part 1. But yeah, I mean, criteria is a very tricky subject. Most people are not prepared to even talk about it, let alone have multiple criteria for which to judge. But I've got a list of, I think, 10. I started working on this criteria list of the top Beatles stuff. What makes the song the best? This isn't just for the Beatles, but I think it's 10 points. So I'll probably start with that. Are you still regularly buying records? Well, sort of. Occasionally, I mean, I still will pick up stuff on YouTube. I'm sorry, on eBay. I haven't been to a record shop in a while. I've got a gift card here burning a hole in my drawer. I got to get out and do that. But I do like to get out. My one of my sons does like to purchase vinyl, and my other son just got a vintage stereo, so they're kind of getting set up. So it's much more fun to do it with somebody. I pretty much avoid record store day though. It's kind of like Black Friday for me. I just go when nobody's there. It's a lot easier to get around. French Canadian music, French country music. Okay, I'm not too familiar. I know some of the rock bands, psychedelic bands, but beyond that, I don't know. Matt, is it true that the Beatles asked Colonel Tom Parker to be the manager? I don't think so. Maybe. I don't know. I seem to have heard that, but it doesn't have the ring of truth to me, but I could be wrong. Buffalo Springfield. I did do Buffalo Springfield. That's the second band I ever did. And so it's an earlier, I wasn't quite sure how to do these videos, and I'd love to redo that one. I don't know that I will, though. I might just do a 4 that will kind of bring it all together. Let's see what else we got here. Robbie's recent Doors book is very good. Yes, I've heard that's very good. I listened to a podcast of a guy, Professor Hamamoto, who is a cultural forensics expert, I guess you say. He did a podcast, video cast actually on that book, and I have that in my Amazon cart. Have yet to buy it, but I think I may buy that one since others have recommended it. What do you think about AI and hearing music from defunct bands or deceased artists? Well, this is a good question. I was at, when I do jump over to some Facebook pages here and there, and they never cease to amaze me how some people can just get these little snits. And it was on the Nothing Is Real Facebook page. Some of the people on there got so Twitter-pated by the talk of AI that they had to shut down the conversation. I think this is a slippery slope. Well, isn't AI in general a slippery slope? Part of me thinks that this world should be bombed back to the Stone Age and start over. I don't trust the people who create AI. But AI will where music is concerned, I've not been very convinced of any of it sounding very good. I think it's going to get very good. So in other words, we could hear the Beatles do a rendition of Instant Karma. And that could be done. And I think that's going to start being done. And there's going to be some argument over it. But, boy, I don't know. We have a lot of time on our hands, don't we, for doing that? A lot of time. Yeah, okay, the band. Robbie Robertson's Theft of Composer's Rights. Most likely I will be covering that. Yeah, I really like the band. I've never been gaga over the band. I appreciate what they did, and I completely recognize how groundbreaking they were. But I'm a little tired of hearing that. One of those things that but I think it is worth going into. I just was listening to a recent Todd Rundgren interview, having come off of all these Beatles things for Let It Be and Get Back, and how Harrison had spent this time late 68 with the band, and how wonderful it was. 18 months later, the band was in chaos, absolute chaos. That honeymoon did not last nearly as long as the Beatles. So for Harrison, it's all relative. The water was warm with the band in 68. Come 71, Georgie, I don't think you were hanging out with them at the time. Godfather of psych guitar, Jorma Kaukonen or James Gurley? I'm going to go with Jorma. I just think he's a more disciplined player. I think he's a more versatile player. I haven't listened to all of Gurley's stuff. I do like the rawness of Big Brother. And Jorma gets a little bit, some of his playing is a bit harsh for my ears, but I like his acoustic playing. In fact, I just was listening to some of the Qua album today. I'm like, wow, this is a great album. But that's not psychedelic guitar, so that's a little bit off this topic. Beatles' Love was worse than AI derivative work. Oh, Chauncey. Always making trouble, aren't you, Chauncey? Yeah, Love was, I don't know, was Love controversial? Not in my circles. I thought that was a pretty decent way to do it. I didn't have a problem with it. I actually liked it when it came out. But where do you stop with that? I guess they just stopped at one with the show. It seemed to make sense to go with the actual live show. Pookie, the Naz. Yes, I've done the Naz, actually. Very happy to say that is not on my list anymore. Psychedelia, your favorite genre? No, I have to keep switching around because I get tired of one. So on my Pop Goes the 60s playlist, which I started when I got an Apple computer back in 90s, whenever that was, 99. My Pop Goes the 60s playlist has got over 10,000 songs, 60 stuff, and I just shuffle it and just, that's kind of how I like to listen to it. So when I'm working on projects on the house, which I was doing for this wedding, I was able to put my music on the background and let it go for 10 hours and just enjoy it. Okay, where are we at here? I'm getting back. I saw a good AI last night on YouTube of Paul singing the Strawberry Fields Forever from Twickenham Sessions from the Get Back film. Yeah, well, I've had that. He is singing it, and I think it's George on guitar next to him, kind of noodling around. I love it. It's just a little snippet. Are you sure there's any AI involved in that? Well, I guess somebody could take it to that extent. The Guess Who, yes. We will be doing the Guess Who. Do I have a favorite Beatle? No, I do not. Why is George Harrison's stuff such a downer after the first 2 studio albums? Downer. Well, I've got some opinions about George Harrison. A lot of fans out there don't like my opinions of the solo Beatles. I actually listen to George Harrison more than any other solo Beatle. And the way I listen to it, I've got 2 playlists. I've got kind of the obscure songs of his that I really like, and I've got, I guess, more of the hits. And I don't find I find some of the downer stuff. Well, I just listen to the song if it's good. If I really like the song, I don't mind the spirituality or the downer he's got some very sunshiny songs when he's working in that D C chord. Here Comes the Sun. Your Love Is Forever. What else? My Sweet Lord. Blow Away. Those are all the same chord progressions. Those are sunshiny chords. He does dip back into the more, I guess you'd call it depressing stuff at times. But I would say there's his album in 76, 33 and a Third, and then the self-titled album of 79 are relatively positive. So I listen to those more than Dark Horse and Extra Texture. Lower Third, David Bowie. I've heard bits of it. He was just not ready. There's one song I found a few years ago was called, what the hell is it called? Let me just look up real quick. Not When I Was Young. When I Was a Boy. See if I can find it real quick here. Of course, iTunes has changed and I can't look up stuff easily like I used to. Anyway, I do like some of his stuff, and he was covered by other bands, which tells me that people liked his stuff, and he was up and coming. But I pretty much start his career with Space Oddity and go forward. I go from roughly Space Oddity up to Scary Monsters, roughly. Okay, a couple more questions, and I'm going to pack it in here because I'm getting a little bit low on energy with my voice. Let's see here. Hot Tuna. Jim Morrison AI doing. Yeah, this AI stuff is going to be interesting. I hope too many people don't get sidetracked by it and not listen to the real stuff. I will be doing a review of All Things Must Pass soon here. And I'm going to be doing another collaboration with John Heaton. So that's a video you're going to see in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be discussing a Ringo album. We've done a John, Paul, George album. Now we're going to discuss a Ringo album. Let's see here. Okay. Harrison is like a shy and unimaginative Frank Zappa. That's interesting. Very interesting. Zappa's one guy I play his stuff and I always get into it a little bit, but overall he's just all over the place for me. And I like his 60s stuff more than anything. And I do listen to that. Do you have a plan for a video covering the period of September 65 to June 66? Are you referring to the Beatles? You must be. Could have graced its double album of all time. Yeah, they could have. I will be talking about Beatles individual albums and reviewing them. I may start jumping around after I get through the first couple. I've only done 2 so far. And they don't need to be done in order, but it kind of helps. And that way, when I make a playlist, they just go right in order. It's easier. But I'm going to be looking at some obscure Beatle albums too to review, just for fun, that I think you might enjoy. Ernie, very good question. Matt, I have a question. Did John Bonham play drums on Donovan's Hurdy-Gurdy Man? So those of you who are Donovan fans, or if you listen to the Nothing Is Real podcast, they regularly send up Donovan, because Donovan has developed a bit of a reputation from the 90s forward to taking some credit for putting people together that maybe he shouldn't. For example, I've got a box set of Donovan's. I see it right there. It's called Troubadour. That came out in the 90s, I believe. It's a 2-disc set. And there wasn't a lot of good Donovan stuff on CD at the time, so I grabbed it. But the liner notes of that claims that John Bonham, Jimmy Page, and the bass player, his name escapes me. Somebody will give it to me. That they all play on that track. What the hell's his name? I was going to say Mick Taylor. Let me see here. Somebody will give me the name here. Anyway, no, Bonham did not play on that track. It's Clem Cattini, a session musician. In fact, the only Zeppelin player that played on that track is the bass player, whose name I can't remember. Oh, I want to walk over there to my Zeppelin albums and look. John Paul Jones. John Paul Jones booked the session, and he has confirmed that neither Page nor Bonham played on that. But Donovan's been talking about that for some time, taking some credit for inventing Celtic rock, which he probably did to some degree. So that is a myth that we took care of tonight. Okay, let's see what we got here. Somebody talking about Buck Owens, 60s influential rock. Yeah, I believe Buck Owens was a pretty major player. I was a big Roy Clark fan watching Hee Haw in the 70s. Boy, could he smoke it. I was a violin player. So watching him fiddle, I came from the Suzuki method, which is very classical, very formal. And when I saw Roy Clark play, I'm like, whoa, that was like rock and roll. All right. Yoko is an AI creation. John Paul Jones, yes, thank you. I was able to get that, but I took much longer. See how I'm getting old here. All right. So Donovan is a guy that I would love to do. And I think most people really like Donovan. Some people think he's kind of too flower powery, too hippy dippy, you know. But like I said, I was surprised at how many people loved my video series on Paul Revere and the Raiders. So I never know what people are going to really clamp onto. One of my bigger requests was Spanky and Our Gang, which I did rather early on. I never thought that would be a high request, but it was. So keep the requests coming and share these. And it's just interesting to see where these go and what people get turned on by these. I know these streams show up in different Facebook and Instagram feeds, and that's all great. I thank you all for sharing that. So, yeah, Roy Clark, Glenn Campbell. Glenn Campbell, yeah, he's a guy. One of my very first 45s was Wichita Lineman, which I never felt to this day. I don't feel it's a country song. I mean, some people call it a country song. I think did Rick Beato do a video on that? Is this the best country song ever? I'm surprised. I haven't watched that yet. I shouldn't comment. So yes. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to cut it off there. So hopefully this will all record properly. I might have to splice a couple things together because we had that break in there. But I'm glad I had so many people joining. I was lucky. I almost didn't pull this thing together. So at least I have one under my belt now. And I'll know how to do it the next time. So what I'll do, if all goes well, I will post this to the general public. And I've got a gift to get out to the person who got the Beatles song I played at my wedding. So I will reach out to you individually. So thanks everybody for joining in, and I appreciate the support. And there's plenty more coming. I'll probably upload something, a little gift for you guys coming soon here. Haven't thought about what that is yet. I'm working on, now that the wedding's done, I'm working on some merch, some other fun things like that. So we'll get you all set up for Christmas. So, all right, we will see you very soon. Thanks for watching. Pop goes the 60s.